slightly low volume.
Is it better now?
Yes, sir. It's no better.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Professor Balwinder. Okay, I have been given a task to introduce about the 3D printing and then its application in flexible antenna design. My actually aim for this discussion is to something in line with the Government of India initiative of Make in India. We want to have something development of some product which is indigenous, low cost, and can be directly used by lab scale development followed by for the production in the industry. So just before I start, I just want to share three signature slides which gives this importance. In our country, from last 30 years, the contribution of the manufacturing sector is around 15%, whereas our neighbor China, the contribution of the manufacturing sector is around 34% in the GDP of the country. This data I have taken from the Niti Aayog website, and what it says that this is representing a policy failure at our level. Government is really serious to have something, the development of the product at the in the country itself, right? So government wants that we must have the increase in the contribution of the manufacturing sector in a big way. In 2004, to address this issue, the Government of India set up a National Manufacturing Competitive Council, and which has been headed by Prime Minister, and of course, this is being governed by some group of ministers. And in 2006, the Prime Minister expressed the concern for the improvement in the manufacturing sector from which was at that time 12 to 14% to 25 to 35% in the GDP of the country. If you just see the Niti Aayog website, it is said that by 2025 we want this contribution to be 25%, because this will add 100 million jobs for us. This is not like that only the government is talking about this thing. Even the private sector and the public sector people at different platforms, they are also giving this information that we must increase this contribution. But there are some issues like we have a problem with the inadequate infrastructure, we have a problem with the land acquisition, we have a problem with the labor laws, right? So these actually hinders the growth of the industry sector. So then what is the solution if these are the problem? Then to solve this issue, there was in one of the meeting between CII and government of Andhra, they concluded that innovation in product and process can be the key driver for the growth in the manufacturing sector. Now, this is the point from where I would like to start my presentation. That innovation in product and process should be the key driver for the growth in the manufacturing sector. Here, manufacturing does not mean only the mechanical manufacturing, but all sort of manufacturing. So we have to innovate. We have to come up with some product or a process, and then if we come up first, we become the pioneer. Then we are going to have a lion share in the market. Let me give you one simple example. In our country, most of the people go for the religious tourism. So whenever they go to some religious place, they want to buy some sort of a souvenir with them. So once they buy a souvenir, it is basically sort of a token of remembrance with them of that particular place. But if you see, like from this Punjab side, a lot of people go to Maharashtra, Nanded for daily for it is reported that around 4,000 5,000 people pre-COVID period used to go to the Nanded, and even on some special days there may be number more than 10,000 also, right? So just imagine in the evening or whenever you are coming back from somewhere religious place, you want to have some sort of a souvenir. And one of the common souvenir is nowadays the set of LEDs, right? So whenever you go to some shop for purchasing some LED in some night lamp or something like that, the shopkeeper used to tell, okay, this is Chinese, so whenever you go out of the shop there will be no guarantee, right? So but even then we buy that. Why? They add some value into the product. What is the value addition? One is normally they put some religious symbol like a konkar over the top of the LEDs, or they may write some quotation like Yatra Siri Hajur Sahib. Basically, these values, what they add value into the product, right? So But what is this? This is one of the simple example of a innovation. So they have done a innovation in the product. Otherwise, nobody is going to purchase a LED whenever you go to that place. Then you innovate that how you can attract the the customers, right? So if we innovate in a way that it basically is a eye catching for the buyer, then the buyer is going to have that. Now to have that sort of a innovation, so one of the area is the rapid prototyping. Now this is the another slide which I will share with you, then I will start my actual topic. This is based upon the Thomson Reuters data. What it says that India's share in the engineering research was 4.3% in 1981, which was reduced to 2.2% in 1995, and then since 2010, this is again till now it is again around 5%. That means for 95% of the research we are dependent upon the Western world. Similarly, if you see the other countries like China, Korea, Taiwan, they are contributing more than us. We normally used to say that we are good in software, but actually, as per the Thomson Reuters, 0.4% only. It means we need to have something increase in the R&D capacity of our nation, right? Now to have that R&D capacity and to come up with the innovative product, so one of the area is the rapid prototyping or the 3D printing. That is the discussion for us, and we will specifically talk about those in-house development of the 3D printing for the antenna application. Now one slide for the just brief history of the 3D printing. This I have taken from the Chang and Chua paper 2005, Journal of Advanced Manufacturing Technology. What it says that mechanization was reported something around 70, then first computer around 46, then first NC numerical control system around 52, then first commercial laser around 60, first commercial robot 61, then of course CAD in 63, and first commercial RP system in 1988. Right now, this is 2020. So since 1988 2020, there have been a different technologies associated with this rapid prototype, right? Rapid prototyping can be broadly categorized into three types. One is additive in nature, second is subtractive in nature, and third is combination of additive and subtractive. Right? So you just take it like this. Whenever we talk about the concept of rapid prototyping, I think I am interested in making a prototype at the fast rate. That prototype can be of the mechanical component, that can be of the electronics component, that can be of the electrical component, or it may be hybrid component, right? So one of the simple example of subtractive manufacturing is the use of the CNC machining. So from last 20 years, the CNC has been, doing wonderful job in the market, and lot of people are using some standard CAD-based data, and we are just removing the material like by machining most of the time. So that is why it is called the subtractive manufacturing. Then in additive manufacturing, which is of course the talk of the town now, it may have a technologies based upon some liquids which are being added. Then it may be having some powder based technology. Then it may be having a sheet based technology, right? So accordingly, based upon liquid, powder, or sheet based technology, around 30 plus technologies are commercially available at very low cost, right? Then there can be a combination of additive and subtractive, means some portion we are making with the additive manufacturing and some portion we are making with the subtractive manufacturing. It is expected that in coming 5 years, this hybrid approach of additive and subtractive will work, and probably after 10 years, the whole manufacturing will shift to the subtractive, will shift to the additive part, which is 75% nowadays the subtractive manufacturing, right? So under the this additive, we have different technologies which may be based on polymers, which may be based on some molten metals, which may be based on fusing some layers, which may be based on some binder ink jetting. So there are the different technologies like stereolithography, digital light processing, fused deposition modeling, multi-jet modeling. The aim for discussion with you people is not to explain some technology. It is to hybridize the technology and to make it low cost for the development of low cost flexible antennas. That is actually ultimately we want to understand, right? Now, some of you may be the beginner in the area of 3D printing. So just I want to explain the concept of 3D printing in a simple way. Prototype 3D printing is a fabrication method where the physical objects are constructed by depositing material layer by layer, which are computer controlled. So basically, I am using a CAD design, and then I have a animation software which is help me in modeling, and then transform them into the cross section, which are again virtual, and one layer is deposited over the second layer. Like for the beginner purpose, I have some data in the 3D CAD file. That data I send to the 3D printer, which here is looking like a photocopier, and I am getting the 3D printed object. Now, how practically it is working? You just imagine this particular 3D printing approach was started on a HP based inkjet printer. You know, if you have come across some inkjet printer, how actually it works. It has a cartridge which is in the form of having a ink in the form of the powder, right? Now there is a nozzle. Once you give a command from that nozzle, the the controlled quantity of the powder is being sprinkled in XY Cartesian coordinate system, and I am getting a 2D image, right, on a paper. Just for example, I am interested in drawing a rectangle or a triangular shape or any other shape. So whatever the CAD file I will give, right? So the defined quantity, controlled quantity of the powder is being sprinkled through a nozzle, and it is moving in a XY coordinate system, Cartesian coordinate system, and finally I am getting a 2D image. Now just imagine, in place of one nozzle, there is one nozzle, some
Sir, you are not audible.
Sir, it is not audible. Rupinder, sir? Sir, I think there is an internet issue at his end.
Yeah. Follow.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now you are audible.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir. You are audible.
Am I audible, please?
Yes, yes, sir. You are audible. But I think you are not
Am I
able to.
audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Audible,
But I
sir?
think you are not.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir. But I think you are not able to listen us.
Sir, please check your
Is it
speakers.
audible?
Sir, I'm calling, sir.
So, dear participants, Dr. Rupinder is rejoining. So, due to some technical issues, he got disconnected. So, within a minute, we will be starting our session.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Okay. So,
Your
yeah,
screen, yeah, kindly share screen.
you have to again give me the presentation right.
I'm
Can you
doing so.
kindly see?
I don't know why this happened.
There may be some internet issues.
Now to share the screen.
Yeah. I think I have discussed
Yes,
this slide.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this after this slide, we could not get.
Okay, okay. So just what I want to explain is like this is a basic 3D printer which was based upon the powder based technology, and this was first developed in MIT something around in 1988, and finally this was commercialized by a company called Z Corporation. So that is why this is also called Z cast process. So what the basic idea is, I have the two nozzles. From one nozzle some powder is being sprinkled, and from second nozzle some binder is being sprinkled. So layer of powder and layer of binder. So what I am getting is a three-dimensional object. Now this is a one of the example of a typical mechanical component. I am interested in making a type of the component. You see, this is used in the suspension system of the truck, right? So I have a CAD file, so I can convert using any software to the CAD model. Then we use a special file format. Now this is really important for the persons who are starting their work in the 3D printing. Is that once we store some data and we want to send it to the 3D printer, a special file format that is called the STL file that is being used by the 3D printer. STL is a standard triangulation language or stereolithographic language that is being used internationally as a standard for giving some input to the 3D printer, right? So this is one of the slicing software that has been used to make the different layers, right? In the of course these are the virtual one. Then there are some parameters that I can control, that how much layer thickness should be there. Then there is a concept of part orientation. Part orientation means suppose I am interested in making a part, I can put the orientation like this, horizontal at angle 0 degree with x-axis. I can change at certain angle with x-axis, let us say 45 degree, 60 degree, 90 degree. So similarly I can have a orientation with respect to y-axis, with respect to z-axis also. Then once I prepare a part, how much will be the post curing time requirement? So that can be some of the parameters. Now this is the 3D view of the powder being used. You see here initially the loose powder. This is just basically a powder that can withstand the high temperature, right? Then I have a roller which basically smoothen the surface. Then you see over here the layer of powder and layer of binder is being sprinkled, and finally once I will have a number of layers, and finally I'm getting a cavity like this, right? Once I have a cavity like this, which is basically a 3D printed cavity, right, then I can pour the molten metal. So you can see the number of cavities are there. Then I am coating it with some loose sand, and finally I am getting a cup shaped component, which is actually the functional prototype that can be used for the actual 3D printing application. So this is just a simple example to understand what the 3D printing is. So by now what we understand, that 3D printing is nothing but a layer by layer deposition of the material, and I can deposit the material along the x-axis I can deposit the material, along the y-axis I can deposit the material, along the z-axis, and similarly I can also control the layer thickness. Then once I have a particular cavity, then I will pour the the molten metal into it, in as I have given in this particular example, and finally I will have a final component in the form of the casting available with me. So this was one of the basic, the way how the 3D printing was started, right? Of course, this is nowadays more or less the obsolete technology. This was because of the crude way, and lot of the material wastage was there. So that is why this photo technology is more or less now has been obsolete. Now, since we are going to talk about the really a technology which is more advanced and more controlled. Let us have one introduction about the concept called 4D printing. So, what basically the 4D printing is? In 4D printing, the idea is that we are having a 3D printed part, but that 3D printed part is really smart, right? What does this means of the smartness is, and that part can really grow as a function of time. All of you must have come across some of the 2D images, like you have a X-ray image or you have a CT scan image. Then you can think of a 3D image. You are getting a voluminous data, means you are getting a 3D image in the form of some X, Y, and Z value, means some thickness is there. Now just think of a 4D image which is changing its value as a function of time, right? So that means as the let us say you are doing some sort of a scanning for some patient, right? And one way is you get a 2D image, second way is you get a 3D image of some problem, the third is you see the variation in the image as the function of time for the duration of the period you are doing that sort of a testing. So that is basically a 4D imaging. Now, inspired from the 4D imaging, there is a 4D printing. That means the printed part that I am using, it is having a 4D capabilities. This is really important for my antenna materials, right? Like I give you one simple example. All of you must have seen a sunflower. So as there is a movement of Earth around the sun, so sunflower changes its direction, right? So basically there is a stimulus which is in the form of light. Basically that light stimulus motivate the sunflower to change its direction, right? So that is basically a four-dimensional capability. That means a 3D part is there, which as a function of time, under the action of some stimulus, can have some sort of a displacement. You have seen many number of flowers who just open up or closes as the day progress. So in the morning, once there is a sunshine, so they open. So once there is a sunset, they basically close, right? So there is some sort of a displacement which is actuated as a function of light. So light, right? So whenever we talk about 4D printing, basically we are interested in the printing of the smart materials. I'll give you one more example to understand in a better way. We are working with some biomedical professional who are basically installing some ribs for a young boy who has lost his ribs because of some accident or some trauma, right? Now as the boy will grow, if I have replaced that ribs which is sort of a net of some titanium based wires and shell is there, but those are not going to grow. But once I will talk about 4D printing, I will talk about a set of shell or mesh which is going to grow as the person is going to.
Hello, Rupinder sir. Again, there is no voice. Sir, you are not.
Is it audible? Please update. Is it audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now it's audible.
Is it audible? Please.
Yes, sir. It's audible.
Is it audible?
You are audible, sir.
Yeah.
You are audible, sir.
Okay, so I'm sorry for the disturbance. I don't know why this is happening again and again. Again, we were talking about the 4D material. So what basically the 4D is, we are interested in some smart behavior of the material, which is going to uh, control the, let us say, the dimension of the material, some the volume of the material, or some other property. I was giving you one example of some food articles. Let us say you are in a big shopping mall, and there are number of there is a big storage, and you want to know the expiry date of the product. Let us say I have a way that once my food is going to change, let us say, color of the container, right? So that is what is 4D property. Otherwise, I need to read from the the container. Okay, what is the expiry date of the product? But if it changes its color, I can directly see that okay, this is the 4D material, and let us say the color is changed to the red because of some chemical reaction. So that stimulus is going to help me in a big way. Right now, this smart behavior can be the intrinsic property of the material, or it may be the extrinsic property of the material. Intrinsic means like it has a property of the self expansion or self contraction. Like, take the example of a piezoelectric crystal. If I have a piezoelectric crystal, I apply a load over it, then it is going to change its dimension, right? So if I release the load, it is again coming back to the original position. So this increase in dimension or decrease in dimension with the application of a load, this is going to be a really application in the 4D printing, right? So there can be a property like self expansion or self contraction. Sometimes these properties are added externally into the material, right? Then we call it as a type of material. For example, I'm interested in some developing of some biosensor or a antenna which is going to give me some emitter and some transmitter. Then I am going to add some property into the material. Like, how I can add that property into the material. For example, I am interested in increasing the electrical conductivity or the magnetic property of material. So I am adding some graphene as a reinforcement into my thermoplastic. So this is one of the example of a reinforcement type of material. Then we have another category that is called the meta material. So what is actually a meta material is, all of you must have seen a railway bridge, right? If you see that railway bridge, it is not a the straight section. Rather, we have some complex sections which are aligned in a particular angle and a particular length. So metamaterial is a typical example of the rearrangement of links and the angles at which that particular links are aligned to give some defined property to that material. So that is actually the going to improve some of the mechanical properties of the material, right? Like I have already explained to you, the 4D printing materials can be categorized as shape memory polymer, there can be shape changing polymers, and there can be the materials. So there are many good papers for all these type of materials. There can be one-way programming, there can be two-way programming, right? Like, what is the one-way programming, two-way programming? Like, for example, your material is in state A. Now you give some stimulus, which may be, let us say, the temperature, and it is going to convert into the shape B. One of the simple example is, let us say I have a water, I extract heat from it, right? So I reduce the temperature, so it is going to become an ice, right? So this has changed its state. So what is the stimulus? Stimulus is the temperature. Now again you give the temperature, it will again come to the liquid state, right? So this is a one way of programming. The another way is, let us say I have a matter in the state A, I want to convert it into the state B. Let us say I am using a stimulus as electric field. So once I switch on the electric field, it is behaving in a particular way. So once I switch off the electric field, it again comes back to the original position, right? And there can be the multi stages, like from A to A1 I'm using some stimulus, then from A1 to A2 I can have another stimulus, then from A2 to A I will have another stimulus. I will show you with a case study how this stimulus is going to control some of the typical dimension in my antenna design, right? And how we will go for some sort of a characterization from typical material processing viewpoint, right? I think the idea is clear now. 3D printing is something the printing the physical part in third dimension, and 4D printing is something which is adding some property into the material, right? Which is actually activated through some external stimulus, which may be in the form of heat, light, magnetic field, temperature, these type of things, right? So there can be the different stimulus, like in this particular screen you can see I can have a stimulus in the form of electric or the magnetic field. I can have a stimulus in the form of mechanical load. I can have a stimulus in the form of light. I can have a stimulus in the form of temperature. I can have a stimulus in the form of some chemical energy, right? So these different stimulus actually they help me to give a some particular property of the material. To understand it in a better way and to go for the characterization along with for development of some antenna for the flexible antenna, let us understand some of the basic things that are required for making it more flexible. So this is the first test that I am showing in this picture. This is called the MFI. There is a particular standard called ASTM D1238, American Society for Testing of Materials Standard 1238, which basically talk about the rheology of the material. Like for example, I am interested in making some 3D printed flexible strip for making an antenna, right? So what I have gone through the literature is the people are talking about using of a ABS material along with the Ninja Flex material, which is going to give some sort of a flexibility. But once I will see this problem from the material processing engineering viewpoint, then I have to basically understand how this material is going to flow. Like for example, if I take, let us say, 10 liter of water in a container and I just drop over a table, so it will flow and it will cover some distance. Now I take the same volume of the honey and drop over a table, definitely it is going to have going to cover less distance, right? The simple answer you will say there is a difference in the viscosity and the density of the material. So similarly, whenever I have to make some flexible part, it may be for some mechanical manufacturing or it may be for some electronic based component, first thing I have to control is the flow behavior of that material. So in our term we call it as the rheology of the material, and this is a first test that we will perform. What is the rheology of the material? So what basically that test is, I have a inlet over here, there is a barrel, then I can control the temperature of this barrel. I apply some load and some material is coming out of this. Like all of you must have seen a machine for the extraction of the juice from some orange or some mosommis and all. So what we do is we apply some mechanical load, there is a crushing and some juice is coming. So similarly, just imagine there is a applied load. I am putting some polymer from this inlet, then I am applying a load, I am applying a temperature, and some material is coming out of this. So how much gram in 10 minutes is coming, that we call it as the MFI of this material. So if basically MFI, which is in the form of gram per 10 minutes, is more, that means the flowability of the material is more. If the flowability of the material is more, that means the more quantity of the material will flow in a particular time duration, and hence we will be able to prepare the thin section of the component, right? So whenever I am interested in making some antennas with some hybrid material or multi materials, basically what I have to do is I have to see what is the flow behavior used for this particular application, right? Then you see there is a standard machine that is called a twin screw extruder, which is basically used for making this type of the material. What we actually do is, you see here is the raw material that I am fitting over here. Then here are the two screws which are basically moving in a clockwise or the counterclockwise direction, and finally the material is being forced to enter into this, and finally it is coming out of this zone in the form of the feedstock filament. So this is how we prepare commercially the feedstock filament for a 3D printer. I repeat again, this is sort of a manhole type thing, so that granules, the polymer material, is being blended between these two screws, and once those are blended and it is forced to come out through this die, and this is in the form of the wire. Now this wire feedstock filament is fed into the 3D printer. Now how actually the 3D printer work, I will just explain in the next slide. Right, so this is the way the commercially 3D printer, nowadays low cost 3D printer is working. Right, first I will give you one example of a powder-based 3D printing. Now, this 3D printing that I am discussing with you, this is not a powder-based. This is a wire-based 3D printing. So, to make a wire-based 3D printing, what I need to do is I need to have the control over the flow property of the material, right? So, the particular technology that I am talking to you is the fuse deposition modeling. This will be more clear from this particular, the presentation, this slide. What we have is we prepare a feedstock filament which is in the form of the spool, and this spool is fed into this zone, which I am calling it as a liquefier. You see again here, first stage is prepare the rheological analysis of the material, which gives me how much flow of the material will take place. Then, based upon that flow that I have already controlled, I will put the material into this extruder, and this extruder basically will help me in preparation of the wire. Now this wire is here in the form of the spool. This is fed into this chamber, which I am calling as a liquefier. So what is there in the liquefier? I have a set of mechanisms, sort of a, the gear mechanism is there, which is forcing this wire type material to enter into this. Then there is a liquefier chamber. So the normally for the commercial printer, the inlet dia of the wire is varying from zero point 0.5 to 4 mm, and the output dia is normally in the range of 0.8 mm dia, right? So once this material is fed into this liquefier, right, so there is a deposition of the material layer by layer, and this platform is lowering down as the material is being deposited. Is it clear? Is it clear now? Okay. Now you see, sometimes I am interested in making a complex shape. Like in this case, the dark blue color you are seeing, here is a cantilever type arrangement, right? For this type of state, I need to support this material. So in place of one wire, I am using a two wires. This another wire which I am calling as the support material, right? So there are now two wires. One is a support material, another is a build material. Build material is actually the part material which I am interested as a functional prototype, and the support material is to give some support while the construction of that part, right? So once this part is complete, what I will do, I will simply put it into the water. The support material is going to dissolve in the water. This is a water soluble polymer, and the build material is not going to dissolve in the water. So I am getting a final component which is ready to use for any particular application. Now just imagine for making a antenna, what I need to do is I need to have a conductor and a insulator type combination, right? And my interest is to have a flexible sort of a patch antenna or something like that. So what I will do, I will control basically the rheology of the material. Based on the rheology of the material, I can control the thinnest section possible, right? How much thin section can be there, right? Once I am using a multi-material printing, more than one material printing, then I have to really control about the rheology of the material. Right, now I will try to explain what is the typical application of the 4D material. Like in this particular example, and this I am going to explain, of course, for the antenna application also, but specifically in a typical structural engineering application. What we did is we selected the PLA. So this is a biocompatible polymer. So these are the granules which are available, as you can see in figure 1. Then we have a PVC. There are the another type of granules, and we have a magnetite powder. This is another granules powder form, and this is the wood dust that has been collected from the market. Actually, this was an international project that was awarded to us in collaboration with one of our collaborator in Italy. But what the project was, we were interested in some sort of a making development of a cabins for some offices and homes where the inside temperature we have to maintain, and because of the extremely cold environment outside, and the outside temperature is minus 30, minus 20, right? What we want to have for such type of situation is a insulator, which is the best is the wood, right? And we basically want to the control the temperature in that cabin. Now with the the pollution norms as well as the controlling agency norms, we cannot go for excessive cutting of trees, right? So what we want to do is we want to have something as a replacement of the timber. So what we did is we selected a wood dust, right? Then in most of our office cabins we use a PVC paneling. So once the color or the luster of the PVC paneling is over, then we used to throw it. So basically it adds the waste, a plastic solid waste. So what we want to do is we want to have a recycling of that PVC material. Then the PLA we selected was basically this is a biocompatible polymer and fumes are not that harmful to the humans, right? And finally, this magnetite powder, this was basically added to give me the 4D properties, where I can check the 4D properties, and this is also really important in the antenna fabrication also. How you see this? Now, initially for the different composition, PLA, PVC, magnetite, and wood dust. So the different blends were prepared. And based on these different blends, we use some design of experiment technique. And based on that design of experiment, we prepared the different samples wire with the different proportion of PLA, PVC, wood dust, and Fe3O4. This is basically a magnetite powder. Now I'm interested in a typical self-assembly application. So how the self-assembly is going to help me? Here basically just imagine I'm interested in making some tiles, right? So what the tile will be actually having, the side of the tile which is facing the human, it will be having a maximum PLA. The just next layer will be having PLA and PVC. The next layer will be having PLA plus wood dust, and the last layer which is going towards the wall side, that will be having a Fe3O4 powder, right? So why Fe3O4 we have selected? Because it is going to have a magnetic property. So just imagine I have a metal frame, right, in the form of some wire strip is there. So once I will give a magnetic field, I will give a current. So this Fe3O4, because of the the magnetic nature, it is going to assemble over that frame, right? So once it is assembled, then I will simply screw it, and then I will have a permanent assembly, right? So once I want to the change the material, I can have a just switch off the current, so the electric field will be stopped, and that particular force of attraction will be over, and I can disassemble it. This is really going to help me in the erection of the towers with some different requirement of the properties, right? So here we have basically developed the BH curves, and what we observed is how much is the magnetization, how much is the corrosivity, and how much is the retentivity with the different composition of PLA, PVC, wood dust, and Fe3O4. And we were actually able to develop a tile, and then some mechanical analysis for then therefore this is a morphological analysis based on scanning electron microscopy and EDS analysis, but actually the elemental composition is there. So based on this, we came to know that which particular proportion is better and why, right? And then finally we try to have a properties like what maximum peak load, peak elongation, break load, break elongation, then strength at peak, strength at break, percentage elongation, Young modulus, then stress strain. These values we can all calculate for this particular establishment, right? You just want to locate your antennas at some remote location, how much the environmental conditions will be there. Let us say there are the adverse environmental conditions, so what will be the impact on the mechanical properties? Actually we can see with this hybrid material. Actually we are able to develop a stress strain curve which is something like this, and the area under the curve is basically giving me the modulus of toughness, right? So this is going to give me a very good information that once my material is under the impact load, how this antenna is going to behave, right? How this material is going to behave, right? So this is really important for the different composition of the material. Now this is another test which is definitely I suppose as electronic people you may be interested. This is basically called the thermal analysis of my material. This I am also calling it as a thermogram. Actually, what my interest is to understand in a better way. Let us take one simple example. Suppose I have a bucket in my bathroom and I may use it for a couple of years, right? And there is no crack in that polymer bucket. Now I take a similar quality of bucket and I put in the rooftop. You will see after a few days there are cracks. Basically, why? Because of the excessive change in the temperature condition, like in the morning there may be, or during the daytime there will be excessive heat, and then during the cold night time there is a excessive dip in the temperature. Now, the energy absorbed during the heating and energy absorbed during the cooling cycle may not match with the capacity of that material, and that material is going to crack. So, similarly, when I'm going to develop some antenna material for some external applications where there is an excessive change in the temperature condition, I have to be very particular how this material is going to behave under the repetitive heating cooling cycle. Now, what we do is you see along the x-axis, I have material temperature from room temperature to the 150 degree to the 200 degree. Like you can see over here, from room temperature I am moving to 200, then from 200 to the room temperature, then from room temperature to 200, again from 200 to room temperature, and so and so. So I can have a repetitive heating cooling cycle, and along the x-axis you can also see there is a change in time also. So I am also increasing the time. Whereas along the y-axis, what I am getting is I am getting basically the energy absorbed. So basically, what we want to say is in the different heating cooling cycle, what is the amount of the energy absorbed with the different type of material. Like if you see most of the papers on the antenna design, they have never talked about the thermal stability of the material. And this is something going to be installed in the outer environment where there will be excessive change in the temperature conditions. Sometimes there may be a rainy season, sometimes there can be extreme cold, like specifically in the northern part of the country, we may have a sometimes temperature below zero, and sometimes the temperature goes, something around 50, 55. So my antenna material must be a stable one within that range of temperature, otherwise its property is going to be different. So what we observe in different heating cooling cycles, how my material is varying. And I can basically select that proportion in a way that my material should be thermally stable. So this is one form of a thermal characterization which is must specifically for the external installation of our material. Then you can see I have a BH curve, and we want to see what is going to be there under the different environmental conditions, right? So this is another case study that I want to discuss with you as a use of the ABS material for 3D printing and 4D printing application. So in this ABS, what we have done is we have reinforced the graphene. I think this is more close to the heart of the electronics people, because graphene is something which is known to be the best material for increasing the thermal conductivity, electrical conductivity, and the magnetic properties of the material for the typical 3D and 4D applications. And we are calling it as a secondary recycled ABS. So here is one important thing that we must understand. There are the four phases of recycling: primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. Primary recycling means when I am doing the recycling without any sort of a reinforcement. Like for example, I am using a ABS material and I am again putting that ABS into some sort of extruder, a mechanical means, and then again I am making some sort of a bias without any sort of a reinforcement. Then this is categorized as a primary way of recycling. Now to add some property, normally we add some sort of a reinforcement. Like for example, I add some graphene into it to enhance some property, maybe thermal conductivity, maybe electrical conductivity. Then it is called the secondary way of recycling. But secondary and primary both are using a mechanical means for mixing, right? Then in a tertiary way of recycling, this is again what we are doing is we are using some chemical way of recycling. Means like for example, in mechanical recycling, the dispersion of the reinforcement may not be uniform. To make it the dispersion up to the nano level, what we do is actually we basically blend the component by the chemical mixing way. Like for example, the acetone is one of the chemicals that can be used to dissolve the ABS material. Now, once it is dissolved into the acetone and everything is in the semi-liquid state, Then if I put some dispersion of usually Al2O3, silicon carbide or graphene into it to add some property, the dispersion will be more uniform, right? So that is a chemical way, that is also called the tertiary way of recycling. When primary, secondary and tertiary, these three recycling fails, then we have a quaternary way of recycling. Basically in quaternary way, what we actually do is we use it as an energy recovery process, basically use as an energy source of energy, right? But in our country, most of the work is in the primary and the secondary recycling, right? So this is more clear from here now. So what we did is we put some graphene in the secondary recycled ABS. Let us say initially the 0% by weight graphene, then 2.5%. Then in different weight proportion, we are going to add the different quantity of the graphene into it. And what we observed is the different MFI, right? So as the MFI is increasing, basically I can have a availability of the thinner section. As the MFI was decreasing, I cannot have a thin section preparation with me, right? So then in the second stage, we again go for the thermal analysis of that material. Like it will be more clear from here. So once I add 0% graphene, means there was no graphene, the energy capacity was 15 joule per gram. So this is minus sign is, that is the heating cycle. So this much 0.15 joule per gram was the energy absorbing capacity. So once I am increasing the composition of the graphene, the heat capacity or the thermal capacity was basically increasing. So I can have a particular quantity of the graphene into my ABS, right, based upon my requirement in the thermal analysis, right? I can control basically how my material is going to perform in what type of the environment for making that sort of a antenna, right? Then similar to the previous case, I can go for the magnetic properties. This basically test is performed on the VSM. You can see with the different composition of the graphene, 2.5%, 5%, 7.5%, 10%, 15%. I can see what is the effect on corrosivity, retentivity, and magnetization. Basically, with the increase in the graphene, you can well see directly the magnetic properties basically increasing. But sometimes I have to trade off between the required magnetic property in my material, because I need to generate some electromagnetic waves, but I need to also see what sort of a thermal stability my material is required. So I can do this type of the balance as a material processing engineer for the development of my own material, right? So this is one observation. Now this is another case study that I want to share with you. This PVDF is one of the established thermoplastic material with a piezoelectric property. Basically, polyvinyl difluoride. Basically, it has the hydrogen and fluorine in the alpha phase. So when it is changing into beta phase, what happens? All the fluorine goes to the one side of the chain and hydrogen to the other side of the chain. So we get a charged well, right? So this is basically that beta phase is responsible for the piezo type property in that material. And to increase the piezoelectric property of PVDF material, people have used the reinforcement of BaTiO3, that is basically barium titanate. And to increase the electrical property or the thermal property or the magnetic property, people have reinforced the graphene. So this, in this particular example, for development of a the antenna type of material as a material processing engineer, PVDF with the reinforcement of graphene and barium titanate, I am going to show you, right? So PVDF with graphene, as per the literature, more than 2% graphene reinforcement was not recommended. So the different proportion of PVDF and barium titanate was selected. Their MFI was calculated. Now, one of the question you may have, why I am interested in this MFI? You see the commercial open source printer, they run with the MFI of around 2.5 gram per 10 minutes, right? If you select the proportion of the material in such a way that your MFI remains in that range, then you can print any material without any change in hardware or the software of the system, right? Then we prepared in a similar way the feedstock filament by changing the temperature, by changing the RPM, and by changing the proportion of the material. And similarly, the properties, like you see, the break strength, the peak strength, the modulus of toughness, these type of things were calculated. Right? How we will calculate? We will simply calculate as the area under the curve is. This is basically a test done as per ASTM D638 standard. What actually this test says is I prepare a the dog bone shape component and I hold it in the UTM and then I apply a tensile load and these type of stress strain curves are developed and we try to see what is the area under the curve. And we can see some of the the optimization parameters. Here you can see this is again a thermal analysis of this type of the material. You can see what is the effect on PVDF, then PVDF, graphene, and BaTiO3, and with the different proportion. So whether my material is thermally stable, basically we get three basic information out of this type of the thermal testing. One is what is the glass transition temperature of the material. Glass transition temperature means at that temperature, after that temperature, the material is going to have a plastic behavior, and before that temperature, it is going to have a glassy behavior, right? Then I'm going to understand at what is the melting temperature of my material, right? And I'm going to know if I am heating above the melting point, what will be the crystallinity in that material, right? Most of the they thermoplastic, they are not crystalline in nature. They are all amorphous. So their flow behavior is actually I need to control based upon this rheological and the thermal property, right? That is why this thermal analysis is really important for development of the material for any thermoplastic based 3D printing for any particular application. Then that material was basically fed into the 3D printer. So I print the different size of the specimens. Then we measure the D33 effect to understand what is the piezoelectric constant. So what we observed for this case, this was 20 picocoulomb per Newton. That was sufficient for giving me some sort of a the electrical signal to get it converted into some useful information, right? So this is 20 picocoulomb per Newton. That was a really appreciable for us for developing a some sensor with the 4D capability. Now just imagine I am interested in developing some of the material for my antenna or some 3D part which can have change in the dimensional features. Now in this particular example, I'm going to explain you the use of ZNO nanoparticles which have been put it into the polylactic acid, which is another polymer, and I am interested in controlling their thermal, mechanical, morphological, and shape memory property. Like for example, I am interested in developing some wristwatch, and that wristwatch is going to have some sort of a antenna application inside. But I want it to be a biocompatible number one. Then I want to give it a good signal emitter and transmitter, and I want it to be more thermally stable. I want it to be more mechanically stable, and I want that once it adds to my body, it has a shape memory effect, and it is only activated or actuated once it is installed in my body only, right? So for that purpose, I'm interested in developing some smart materials. So how we actually move is, let us say I have a mechanically blended ZNO particles. So ZNO, I can get nano size from market also, or I can synthesize ZNO to a a sol gel method, right? So that in this particular example, this ZNO nanoparticles were blended with PLA. So this is the you can see a twin screw extruder that I am showing to you. Here you can see the feedstock filament is coming. So twin screw compounding for PLA and ZNO particles. Now I have a sort of a feedstock filament available with me. Now you see in this particular thermogram, I am using a different proportion of ZNO and PLA to understand what is the effect on the glass transition temperature, what is the effect on the melting, what is the effect on the crystallinity, these type of the things, right? From room temperature to let us say 150 or 200, and then once I will go for the different heating cooling cycle. So this will be more clear from here. Here you see this curve. This is PLA with 1% ZNO, and this red color is PLA with 2% ZNO. You see, with the reinforcement of more ZNO, the glass transition temperature was, the least affected. Earlier it was 53, again it was 53.3. So there is a marginal effect on the glass transition temperature. But there is also a little effect on the energy absorbed. Like in this case, it was 21.67, and in second case, it was 22.60. But we want to see whether with this reinforcement, the energy absorbed in each heating and cooling cycle remains same, or it is going to vary in the successive cycle. What we observed is for these type of the polymers, once we have some these type of the smart materials, for 3 to 4 cycles, the material is stable, but after four cycles, the material is going to behave in a different way. So we have to think which particular composition is going to give me this type of material in a more stable manner heating up that is cooling cycle. Because once you install this material outside as an antenna material in some outside environment, then you want it to be there for let us say 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years, right? It is not that you are going to change in one day or 1 month, something like that. So repetitively heating cooling is going to be there, right? So actually what we did is we selected one dimension which is in the U-shaped component, right? And this was actually 3D printed with the different proportion of PLA and ZNO. Now we want to see what is the effect of stimulus on this particular material. So what we actually did is we selected a stimulus as a water, right? So we put the material in water for 5 hours and we see what is the change in the volume. Then what we observed after 5 hours, there was some because most of the materials are hygroscopic in nature, so there is a normally the rise in the volume. But once you put it again for 5 hours, so what will be the change in the volume, whether it is going to take its original shape. So what we observed is that for 1% ZNO at 25 degrees Celsius temperature, it was able to regain its the shape in the form of the volumetric contraction or expansion up to 97.4%. Whereas once this material was observed at 40 degrees Celsius, the recovery rate was higher. This gives us input that this material is going to have two type of stimulus. So one stimulus is the temperature and the second stimulus is the moisture, right? So what we call it as a hydrothermal effect. So for this particular composition that we were talking, in place of one stimulus, there were two stimulus. One is the temperature and another is the moisture. Then we try to see what is the effect on some lower temperature, that is 10 degree and 70 degrees Celsius temperature, on the weight and on the volume. So what we observed under those extreme, the temperature condition, the recovery rate was something around 99, more than sometimes 99%. And then we try to see what is the effect on the why this is the effect. So we try to see their porosity. But we observed that once we were working on these two extreme temperatures, the material is having a controlled porosity, that is more understood from this particular image, where the porosity control is better, right? From where these two values come, these values came from those DSC thermograms, from where I came to know that this material is going to have this much TG, glass transition temperature, and I must observe the property within these materials, right? So this is the another typical 4D application. That means if I select a particular material specifically for the outside antenna application and it is more thermally stable, then of course the outer environment may have a rain, outer environment may have a change in the temperature, right? So what is this hydrothermal stimulus is going to affect my material. If it is contracting or expanding, how this is going to behave. Like for example, I am using this type of material, let us say in the extremely cold temperature, similarly extremely hot temperature, how this is going to behave. So that is the really concern for me as a material developer for these type of applications. Now I give you one more example for this type of material in a quick way. You see, this is the heritage structure, and I am interested in the maintenance of this structure, and I also want that if some antisocial element try to damage my heritage structure, then I get some signal, right? And so that signal, either it is emitted or received through some way, is helping me for the better surveillance of this type of the heritage structures, right? So there are different structures where I can use that and these type of the smart sensors as a surveillance. We are working on some of the bridges and some of the old buildings which are under the tourism or like the state tourism department or under the the central government establishments for as a heritage structures, right? This is a project under the Department of Science and Technology for the betterment of these type of the heritage structure. So what actually the idea is, I come to the technical part because I have a limited time available with me. So what we actually did is we selected the three different type of the polymers. Like one is HIPS, another was ABS, and another was the PLA. So what the difference is, this HIPS was having a MFI in the range of 7.5, ABS was having the MFI of 8.7, and PLA was having the MFI of 13.52. That means if I apply a same quantity of the load under the same temperature condition, the PLA is going to have a very thin structure, very thin section can be produced, whereas the HIPS, for the HIPS, I need to produce the thick section only. Then there is a change in the, the young modulus of the material. So PLA was having a minimum young modulus. Similarly, there is a change in the yield stress. There is a change in the glass transition. You can see for the HIPS, the glass transition was 100. For the ABS, it was 109, and for the PLA, it was 62. Then similarly, the properties like peak load, peak strength, peak elongation, and percentage elongation, these type of properties were also observed. Then what we did is we try to see the multi-material printing at some fixed parameters. So we use a 3D printer, open source 3D printer, a local made under some static conditions like diameter was fixed, diameter of the filament was fixed, layer thickness was fixed, filling pattern, filling speed, travel speed, these were fixed. What we made the difference is sometimes we prepared the lower layer of ABS, intermediate layer of PLA, and the top layer of HIPS. Then in another experiment, we prepared the lower layer of PLA followed by HIPS and followed by ABS. Right. So this will be more clear from this particular picture. Like I'm interested in making this dog bone shaped component, some top layer of another material, intermediate layer of another material, then the lower layer of some other material, and then we try to see what is the effect on their mechanical property, what is the effect on their thermal property, and you see if I see this stress strain curve, typically for the different composition, I came to know that which particular layer combination means if lower is of some other, middle is of some other material, and the top one is of the other material, which is going to give me the best mechanical property, right? And then according to that, once I am using in your typical antenna application, once I am using a different substrate material and then a conducting and non-conducting material, then I am applying a potential difference. I can basically use it as a good antenna material, a typical curvature for especially the restoration of these type of the commercial buildings, right? So we did one analysis based on their morphology. You can see one of the limitation is when we have this type of 3D printing is we got a effect that is called the staircase effect. So in this picture you can see I have a single material called ABS. So the material was printed layer by layer, but there was some asperities, or we call it as a staircase effect. For the PLA it was also there, for HIPS it was also there. But once we have a lower layer of ABS and then we apply a PLA layer over it, what we observed, the PLA, the liquid form of PLA, once it was deposited, it was coming out in the globular form. That means here basically the strength is going to be less, right? So this was observed in different observations. Like once we have a lower layer of PLA followed by a HIPS and followed by ABS, we don't have any problem. So this is really important once we are going to have a multi-material printing. So which layer I have to print first, followed by the layer I have to print later. So that is important, like in a base paper that people used to talk about the flexible antennas using ABS with Ninja Flex or some other, the commercial thermoplastic materials. We can do the similar exercise with all open source material available with us at low cost. But what we need to do is we need to know its rheology, we need to know its thermal stability, we need to know its mechanical property, and I can control the dimensional features, I can control the emissivity features, I can control the thermal stability, I can control the morphology, I can control the modulus of toughness, so that this material is going to behave as a better material for high temperature or the external environmental application. There is one another application for this. For example, my heritage structure is having some, the shape like this convex, right? So you see the inner layer over here is under the compressive load and the outer layer is under the tensile load. So here is the tensile load, here is the compressive load. Now what we do is all material as a single material, we basically do some sort of a replacement. Whereas the inner layer need a better compressive property and the outer layer needs a better tensile property. So with this multi-material printing, right, I can think of a combination of the material with inner as a better compressive property and outer as a better tensile property. And then of course I can think of providing some charge which is going to give me some as a for the fabrication of antenna, right? I can control and use that signal for for judging if somebody has attacked or some antisocial element is there who is going to damage my that heritage site, right? So this is some of the observation in this. Now there is the last discussion before I conclude my talk is how I will decide which dual material I am going to print in the different layer combination. So this application on this particular case study is on this application. So for this case study, we selected two different material. One is ABS and another was PLA, and both were 3D printed. This is the some standard specimen as per ASTM D795 for the flexural testing. Similarly, ASTM D638 for the tensile testing. You can see some printing is going on. What we did is we performed some random experiments in which all the materials earlier were different layers we printed actually with the bed temperature 75 degree, nozzle temperature 200, infill percentage, infill speed, number of parameter, raster angle, width layer, number of layers, all these things were kept fixed, right? So we printed the different number of layers. So once I have all the layers of a single material, let us say all 6 layers of PLA, all 6 layers of ABS, then at random we selected PLA on ABS, then ABS on PLA, and we tried some different combination and try to see what is the effect on the mechanical properties if I have a multi-material printing for this type of the substrate material. So but you can see the different type of tensile and flexural sample. We try to measure their peak load, peak elongation, break load, break elongation, peak strength, these type of properties. Then similar to the previous case, we have the stress strain curve. And here is one of the wonderful observation. So we come up with a new observation that let us say there is a concept called number of conversion NOC and number of negative conversions. So what actually this means, if I am changing the layer from one material to another, that is called conversion, right? And what is a negative conversion? If the PLA is deposited over the ABS, right? So what happens? The PLA is coming out, right, in the form of globule form that I have already shown you one of the examples. So that is called the negative conversion. But if ABS is put over the PLA, so that is non a negative conversion. Like it will be more clear from this example. So here I have deposited 6 layer of PLA. So there is number of conversion is 0. Also there is number of negative conversion is 0. But number of layers of P is 6. Number of layers of A is 0. Right. Now you see the second case. All there are A layers means all are ABS. So there is number of conversion is 0. Number of negative conversion is also 0. Number of P is 0. But number of A is 6. Now see in this example. I have one layer of PLA followed by ABS. So this is one conversion, right? Then from A to P, this is the second conversion. Then P to A, third conversion. Then A to P, there is a fourth conversion. So there are 4 conversions. So number of conversions are 4, right? So once you have a conversion in such a way, you the PLA above ABS, that is basically considered as the negative conversion. You can see here from here A you change to P, from here A again you change to P. So this is the number of negative conversions. So there are 2 negative conversions. Then you have number of P and number of A, right? So similarly, we observed the number of conversions and number of negative conversion for all this. I think I have made the point clear. What is the number of conversion? When we change the material from P to A or A to P, right? What is number of negative conversion? Once the PLA is deposited over the ABS layer, the PLA is coming out because of change in the TG of that material, right? So I am calling it as a negative conversion. So what will come out based on their thermal analysis, based on their these type of testing, what will come out is an observation that once we have to go for the mechanical testing, we should follow a thumb rule. So what actually the thumb rule is, for the mechanical properties, we have to select first where the number of conversions should be minimum, followed by number of negative conversion, right? If we follow this, then definitely I am going to have a better mechanical properties. Similarly, the number of A should be more as compared to number of B, and based upon this observation, I can basically control once I am going for the dual or the multi-material printing for making some part more flexible, which layer should be deposited over the another layer, and the what is the physics behind that, right? So that is the idea of printing this type of the material, right? So here till now I have not discussed about using any particular DOE for the printing of ABS with PLA. Is we have done, but there is a need for the post-processing technique also, and we can extend it for another commercially available thermoplastic material with different Lagrangian temperature, rheological properties, and morphological properties, and I can print any substrate, right? For a typical, the biomedical application, for making any sort of antenna, right? Right now you are talking about antenna only for the transmission of some signals. So let us say for your DTH or for mobile signals, but we can use this type of input even for the the recognition of some animals, even for the the surveillance of some buildings, right? Because the whatever the substrate material I am using, right, I can make a charge over there by using the different conductor and insulator over here, and I can use it from remotely whether my installation is safe or not. And of course I can control the environmental condition for the different applications. That's all from my side using a 3DP and 4DP. Only the benefit I am getting is the flexibility in design. I can print any shape actually, and I can control the insulator and conductor dimensions based on the number of layers to be printed. Right? That's all. Now I am open for any questions. Any question I would like to answer.
Thank you, Professor Rupinder, for your very informative talk on 3D and 4D
Do we have
printing.
any query, please?
And, sir, are you able to listen me? Sir, are you able to listen? I think
Do we
so,
have
you are
any
not-
query?
Sir, I think you are not able to listen me. So, dear participants, if you have
I'm not able to hear you. Sorry.